And I want to say, I've always encouraged people to look at other circumstances, to look at situations in other countries. And indeed, we went ourselves in 96, 97, quite a representative group of politicians in Northern Ireland went to South Africa at the invitation of the South African government and met people who were involved in the negotiations there, both from the ANC and the National Party. And I found it interesting, and I was interested more in process issues about how did you actually conduct the negotiations, what did you do when you had a deadlock on a particular issue, and so on. But while I found it interesting, when we came back, we did it a different way. You can get insights in looking from other situations, but I think it's very dangerous to just read over from one situation to another as if because X worked there, it'll work somewhere else. And so I always put that caveat in, and I think it is important. Turning, however, to what we're dealing with, I think where one has to start in terms of dealing with the sort of situation we have, or we experienced in Northern Ireland, is you have to almost start by saying to yourself, what is the sort of situation you're dealing with? When you have a business of this nature, you've got to work out what are the causes, what has brought what are the issues about, what is the conflict about? Because identifying the situation you're dealing with and identifying the problem is the beginning. Now, having said that, it's very easy to say that. But there was once actually a professor of political science at Queen's who wrote an entire book. It was published by Oxford University Press. White was his name. About 20 years ago the book was published. But he spent about 400 pages listing all the theories and all the explanations that people have advanced for the situation in Northern Ireland and debating them in a very civilised manner. And I'm not going to do that now, and I'm not in a position to do that, but I will actually advance the proposition that with regard to the problems we had and with regard to the divisions in society in Northern Ireland, there were two basic aspects to it. And the first is what could be called the national issue. Now, by the national issue, I mean the question of to which state shall the territory of Northern Ireland belong? Because that was one of the points at issue. And the presence of Northern Ireland was, well, I'll not go into the history of it at this moment, but the question was, to which state would it belong? Because Northern Ireland was not a homogeneous society. There were two basic elements or strands to the society, to the community there. And external commentators invariably refer to those groups by religious labels, about the division between Protestants and Catholics. And there's a sense of that. There's a sense in which that is right. Religion is the best single indicator to the political attitudes and the sense of identity of a person in Northern Ireland. It's the best possible indicator, but it's not an absolute indicator. It's not completely accurate, and so it always has to be treated with caution. But I would want to put in a further note of caution. I don't think it's actually healthy to analyse situations of this nature in religious terms. And this has got a point which has obviously got a wider resonance. If you categorise a dispute in religious terms, you're putting it into an arena where it is very difficult to resolve it. Every religion believes that it contains the truth. Every religion believes, whether they say it publicly or not, that others don't have the truth. And religions are not of a nature where there can be compromises between them because of the nature of the belief that is there. And religious belief is a very strong thing in itself. So if you put your conflict, the situation, the problem you're dealing with, if you put it into religious terms, you're putting it into a context where it is then difficult to achieve resolutions. And you're doing something else as well. Because if you put the conflict in religious terms, then you're saying to every person who's an adherent of the particular religion that he ought to be involved, and he ought to be involved on a particular side. So I have a distaste for putting it into religious terms in the first place. I've always, in dealing with Northern Ireland, preferred to put it into non-religious terms, and I actually think it's right. Because what you're dealing with in Northern Ireland at the heart of the matter isn't a conflict about religion, it's a conflict about to which state does that territory belong, and it's about the conflict between two different national identities. The divisions in the society of Northern Ireland are between those who wish Northern Ireland to remain part of the United Kingdom and who identify themselves as British, and those who would prefer Northern Ireland to be part of a separate Irish state, separate from the rest of the United Kingdom, and who identify themselves as Irish. That is the nature of the problem, and that is therefore then a conflict of national identities. It's a nationalism, conflict of different nationalisms.